After another week of college football, we're live here to talk about what happened in the ACC. We'll then zoom in on Clemson and what they did against Stanford. And then, of course, we'll look ahead to the Clemson-Florida State matchup, which is certainly not what we expected it to be. Before we get into all that, first, I just want to say we'll see how many people show up. I know a lot of people are still without power, so definitely thoughts out to them. I know a lot of folks who did make it to the game were without power. I know some of them. I know Greenwood's back online, and hopefully Greenville will be back online if they're not already. So definitely thinking about you guys up in South Carolina and North Carolina and Tennessee who are so hopefully that resolves soon. Also want to shout out Ready Vets for those of you who are in the Greenville area. Ready Vets is a place where you can bring your pet when you can't get an appointment, when you need something quick and you need to take care of your dog or cat. You can walk right in. They're open late. They're open 7 days a week. And they're owned by Clemson graduates. So check out Ready Vets, save them in your phone, save them in your Google Maps so you know where to find them when you really need them. With that being said, let's dive in. Let's talk about the action this week, and let's talk about the bottom of the conference first. So Wake Forest, home loss to Louisiana. I thought they were bad, but Wake Forest has taken it to a new level. They are really bad this year, and you kind of wonder, they've done pretty well. Past couple of years, despite their disadvantages given their alumni base, they've done remarkably well. They upset Texas A&M that bowl game a couple of years ago. But you look at them now, and with the NIL and the transfer portal, and just the way the whole landscape has evolved, are they even going to be in a major conference in a couple of years? They've already, the ACC's already been kind of knocked a half peg down, right? There was a Power 5. Now there's sort of a two-tier Power 4, and they're in the lower half of that. Now, either the ACC is probably going to fall apart in a couple of years, or it'll within itself have a couple tiers, right? Based on TV viewership, and they're going to be at the bottom of that. So you just got to wonder how long they could really last at this level. Next couple of years will be huge for them. This year, obviously, is going to be a big down year. They almost certainly won't make a bowl. They've got one win. When you look at their schedule, they go to UConn, they host Cal, and they host Duke. Those might be their only winnable games, and those aren't all in a row, but looking at across their schedule, they have maybe 3 wins left on the schedule, and I don't know that they'll get all of them. Maybe they can finish 3-9. That's pretty close to a best case scenario right now. So they're really bad. And then North Carolina is the other team that I think is real bad. They gave up 70 to James Madison. Then they turn around and play better defense against Duke, only give up 21, but it's 21 in a row after they have a 20-0 lead, and they blow it against Duke. Mac Brown, I think this is a swan song. I say a lot of people, but it's really the media has really spoken very highly of him since he came back for round 2 in Chapel Hill. But frankly, he wasted his quarterback talent, and now they don't have it, and you're sort of seeing him exposed. I think they're bad. I think they're really bad, and I think this is the last year for him. Barely a notch above that is Florida State. They'd had their one win against Cal last week, but this week they got demolished by SMU. They went to Dallas and lost 42-16. DJ seems like he continues to regress. He seems worse than he was at Clemson and Oregon State. And I know the talent around was not great, but I struggle to believe it's massively worse than the talent he faced going up against SMU. They're now 1-4, 1-3 in the conference. This could be one of the worst Florida State teams of the last several decades, maybe the worst since Bowden kind of built the program. DJ was 12 for 30, so really bad completion percentage, 222 yards, which isn't so bad, but 2 touchdowns to 3 picks. On the season, he has 4 touchdowns to 6 picks, 53.8 completion percentage, and only a 6.8 yards per attempt. So, he's not throwing a bunch of Hail Marys. He's got a low completion percentage without that. And he's still throwing picks without the touchdowns. He's not a great runner, even though they talk about it constantly, how he's a great runner. He just happens to be big. So it's bad. I think I was the low man on Florida State. I did not buy the hype. I thought Clemson, I thought Virginia Tech, I thought Miami and NC State could all be better than them. And maybe I'm going to be right on technicality because NC State and Virginia Tech are both also pretty bad. But Florida State, I didn't believe would be a contender to win the ACC, but I certainly did not believe this. I figured 8-4, maybe 9-3. I figured their floor was probably 7-5, or maybe even 8-4 is like the floor. But their offensive line is way worse than advertised. Their defense in general is not quite as advertised. And DJ's even worse than I expected. I knew that DJ wasn't going to be great, but I thought it'd be better than this. And I knew their wide receivers would be bad, but I figured Lawrence Toafili as a running back from what I had seen was impressive. And if that O-line was good, I thought they could lean on that. But the O-line's not good, and he hasn't been as impressive. So Florida State's really struggling. And NC State, they're no good, right? Their offense, they can't run the ball. They struggled. They snuck out a one touchdown win over NIU. They will get Wake Forest at home, so that should be a win, but I don't know that they have a ton more wins on the schedule. This is sort of the group in the ACC where I feel fairly confident saying bottom are not good. This middle group, I normally don't have such a big reveal with this many teams, but I did this because, tell me who I'm wrong about, but I don't really care because this is all just the muddled middle, right? Virginia, Cal, Virginia Tech, Stanford, Duke, and then Georgia Tech at 8. You could easily put them in any order, and it would probably be fair. I thought Stanford looked pretty decent against Clemson. Cal has a decent record, but I think it's all fake. Virginia Tech played Miami really tough, but they lost, and the record's terrible. Virginia had off. They lost to Maryland. They haven't really done anything quite yet. Duke's undefeated, but they haven't played anyone. And Georgia Tech has a few losses, but they've seemed really tough. So this group to me is really, really up in the air. Really wouldn't argue with you if you mixed them in any order. Let's see, just a few comments on this group. Virginia will host Boston College. Boston College did not have Thomas Castellanos this Saturday. If they don't have that, if he's out again, quarterback Castellanos is out again when they go to Scott Stadium, I think Virginia very well could win that game. That would certainly bump them a big jump in these power rankings if they could do that. Cal is a weird team, a fun phenomenon, right? They're 3-1, but I don't think they're good. Their FBS opponents they beat UC Davis, and then then they played 3 FBS opponents. Those 3 FBS opponents they played are combined 4-10. They lost to the Florida State team that you see there ranked at 15. So they're 3-1 overall. They beat Auburn, but that Auburn win has aged really poorly. Auburn keeps losing, lost again to Oklahoma after losing to Arkansas. So I don't know that you care as much about the Auburn win as when it happened. It was a lot more surprising. They will have College game day for a 10:30 p.m. game against Miami this weekend. They have been posting some honestly pretty funny stuff on Twitter or X. It's all pretty outrageous. And, most people aren't on Twitter. If you're watching this, you probably are because I post this on Twitter or X. But, most Americans and most college football fans actually aren't on it. So it's wild that they were so influential and actually got College game day to come to Cal Berkeley for the game. I don't think they're good. And they happen to be getting Miami, even though it's a 10:30 game, which I think is really not great. The ACC should try to avoid that. Despite that, Miami does get the extra day rest because they played Virginia Tech on Friday. And, Miami had that tough game. They didn't look so good. I think they'll be focused here. So I think maybe Cal, I have them at 12 for a reason, right? I don't think they're higher. Virginia Tech looked really good, but their record's too bad. So that's why they're not higher. They really challenged them. Probably should have beat Miami. Folks in the comments, let me check out some comments, but Virginia Tech probably should have won that game. Some pretty iffy calls. And then Stanford, I don't want to talk too much about Stanford here because we'll spend time on them when we talk about Clemson, but I thought their run defense was excellent, and I thought their running game was excellent, and they really could have, I don't know, beat Clemson is fair. I don't know if they could have done that, but they really could have made it scary if they hadn't fumbled on that first drive and then immediately gave up a touchdown. And then they had 2 more really great long drives where they just gashed Clemson on outside runs all the way down the field for long drives. And then they get in the red zone, they decide they're going to pass it and throw just awful picks, right? If they just keep running it, I was begging them to pass. If they just keep running it, maybe they score 2 touchdowns there, or at least they get field goals. And then Duke, they're undefeated, but, they picked up one of their best wins of the season, and it's UNC, right? So good for them for being the rival, but they're, UNC is not a good win. And then Georgia Tech had off. I still believe that Georgia Tech is a tough team. So let's see. Let's check out some of these comments. FSU going to be a rout in Doug and Doak Campbell. They don't look good. We'll hit on that a little bit more later in the show. Let's see what else you guys have said. Jeff Collins gonna hire gonna end things in UNC as well. Yeah, the defense is bad in North Carolina, but so is the offense. They're just not good at football right now. But yeah, the 70 points they gave up to James Madison is just completely outrageous. Last year, Georgia Tech had a similar situation against a Group of 5 opponent, and they immediately fired their DC and fixed things. That's not the case in North Carolina. Is they're just kind of riding this down the toilet bowl, and they're just gonna. I think I would be just stunned if they don't fix the coaching staff in the offseason. Another comment by Scott Terry here. Yes, Cal Miami is game day this week, and the cupboard is bare. There's not a whole lot of great games as we look at this weekend. You got Syracuse UNLV on a Friday, Virginia Tech Stanford. Florida State's bad. They're not going to give it to the Florida State Clemson game. Let me see some of these other top 25 games. Michigan State Oregon is not interesting. I guess Missouri at Texas A&M was really your other option. Ole Miss lost. Otherwise, maybe Ole Miss going to South Carolina would have gotten it. That's about it. It's a pretty bare weekend. So if they're going to do something silly, that's the week to do it. Yeah, and Kevin here saying Virginia Tech got robbed. Look, I thought the call at the end, I actually didn't think it was a catch, but there was really no evidence to overturn it. So I see it either way. Honestly, as a Clemson fan, that is the best case scenario. Miami got completely exposed, but they still got the win. So if they play Clemson in the championship game, it'll look better. But now you actually start feeling confident you could beat them. So let's keep moving now. Thanks for the comments. Please keep them coming. Here at 7 and 6, I have Syracuse and Boston College. This is where I'm starting to think some of these teams might be pretty good. McCord at Syracuse, he had that bad game in their more recent loss to Stanford, and then they just had the open date this week. They didn't have an open date. They had, Holy Cross, and they blew them out. But I still kind of think they're solid. They beat Georgia Tech. And I don't think Stanford's bad. So we'll see. They will go on the road to play UNLV, which is an interesting game. It's a Friday night game. They're actually the dogs in that game. They're the underdog. It's in Vegas. So I'm going to kind of feel like they're the better team. I don't know what the situation is at UNLV because they had the whole controversy where they didn't pay their quarterback the NIL they promised, and I don't think he's playing. So I don't know what the deal is there, but I lean Syracuse there. And then Boston College, I think they're good, but they were very fortunate to sneak out with a 21-20 win over Western Kentucky when they didn't have their quarterback, Thomas Castellanos. If he's out, they probably go to Virginia and lose. So big health update there. Yeah, Kevin, you're right. Obviously not very inspiring to struggle and get a 1-point win against Western Kentucky, but Thomas Castellanos is dynamic. They need him. I mean, without him, if he's out for the season, I'm dropping them, 5, 6, 7 spots, right? But I'm guessing he's back soon, so that's why I don't think they deserve to drop yet. And then here at number 5, we have Pittsburgh, and number 4, SMU. And this is where I start getting confident. These are some solid teams. I don't think the Panthers are excellent. They've got some really close wins against mediocre West Virginia, mediocre Cincinnati, and then Little Sisters of the Poor. But they are 4-0. They'll go to UNC. They'll probably be 5-0 after they beat a bad UNC team. So how low are you going to put them? I think Clemson's road trip to Pittsburgh is interesting. Clemson will go Louisville at home on, I think it's November 4th, and then the very next week they turn around and go to Pitt. I think that's their biggest risk there, right? Those two teams in a back-to-back. Louisville is after a bye, which Clemson honestly doesn't typically do well after a bye, at least not recently. But then you turn around and immediately travel to Pittsburgh. I think that's tough. I think those are two good teams. SMU has been, they lost to BYU. They struggled with Nevada and then lost to BYU. I dropped them way down the rankings, and I shouldn't have. I just didn't know BYU was so good. They may be the favorites in the Big 12. What an incredible transition from independent to Big 12. BYU is good. BYU and Utah. I hope that is the championship game in that conference. That'd be awesome. But I think SMU is good. They just embarrassed Florida State. And I know Florida State's not great, but they're not that bad, right? SMU made them look like a joke. So kudos to SMU there. Then we get in these top 3. And this is where it was tough. This is where I really contemplated who should be 1, who should be 2. I think it got really, really close this week. After the game on Friday, in my head, I had Clemson 1. And then Saturday happened, and Clemson won big against Stanford, but it wasn't pretty. And I went back and forth. Here's where I landed. Louisville lost to Notre Dame. But if not for 3 untimely turnovers, they probably win. They went for 4th down several times, failed 4 of them, and they still only lost 31-24, and it was in South Bend. And I think that is some big penalty that was caused by a good crowd. So kudos to the crowd there. But, if they're playing neutral site, best out of 3, I still might take Louisville. I would take Louisville over anyone in this conference. And Louisville's got a big game against SMU. It is in Louisville at noon on ESPN this Saturday. Pretty interesting game. I still lean Louisville there, and that's why I have Louisville above SMU. But I think those are 2 good quality teams. And obviously how it looks, but I would not plan to make a huge drop to either one. Yeah, I agree with you here. They had a bad day, but I still think they're pretty good. And Scott is also spot on here. We'll know more about Louisville after this weekend. We'll see how they do against SMU. But even if they lose close, that doesn't make me think Louisville's bad. But maybe they're just a fringe top 25 team and not a real challenger for the ACC. Then you get to Clemson, you get to Miami. So Clemson, I thought looked kind of bad for maybe most of the first half and most of the third quarter even. They came out, forced a fumble, amazing strip by Wade Woodaz. They jump on it. And then on the first set of downs, outstanding read by Klubnik to see no one's open, see the open field and just take off and run it. I think it was 34 yards for a touchdown. Excellent play. And then they kind of started to stall after that. Stanford with ease, just running the ball. Clemson had no answer to the outside run, particularly with the quarterbacks. We'll dive into this game a lot more in the next little section here, but I thought Clemson looked bad until about 2 minutes or so left in the third quarter. They turned it on, scored, boom, 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 3 straight touchdowns, game over. And that's where that's what they can be. They played a much better defense against Stanford than they had against NC State and App State. So maybe that's it. Maybe they just weren't as sharp. But I thought the atmosphere was great. The night game in Death Valley is always a hassle if you don't live right around the corner. But I do love to go to at least one a year. And the Hills without the balloons kind of stinks during the day. But at night with the fireworks, it's still awesome. And so it was just great to see the atmosphere. I didn't sit in my normal seat, sat next to this guy who was just, hooting and hollering about every play. And we were chatting about a great time. So it was a good game. And I thought Clemson, in the end, looked good for parts, but wasn't dominant enough for me to jump them over Miami. Maybe it's the hurricane distraction, Kevin. Maybe you're right. That's certainly fair. I think they lost power for some time. But nonetheless, Stanford also had flight delays. They had to fly across the country, and the whole thing was screwed up for them too. So you can easily make the same argument for them. So I don't think that's a fair excuse. Miami, they looked poor against Virginia Tech. Probably should have lost the game. I think most of you probably disagree with some of the calls, particularly the replay overturning it. Again, I thought it was not a catch, but upon replay, you couldn't tell. If the rule is indisputable video evidence, certainly didn't meet that rule. So I thought that was odd. But obviously good for Clemson that you have, a top 10 opponent potentially in an ACC championship game if Miami keeps winning. So I'm fine with it, but not great. Cam Ward's a real gunslinger, really fun to watch. Incredible improvisation a couple times. One time he was being sacked and kind of twisted out of it. Then he was being sacked again, twisted out of it and flipped it. And for some reason, Virginia Tech just couldn't tackle the guy and he ran it. I don't know if it was a touchdown or just about a touchdown, but he attacks the middle of the field. He makes plays that are broken. He also makes some turnovers. He had a fumble and 2 picks, right? But I think Miami's ground game was bad and their defense was bad. And that was eye-opening. They hadn't really played anyone. Maybe thought Florida was better than they are. So I thought they got exposed more than Clemson did. They also have been more impressive at times. They haven't lost, I guess, is the real thing. They hadn't lost. Meanwhile, Clemson's lone loss. Georgia lost to Alabama. Leave in the comments there if you were rooting for Alabama or Georgia. I was stopped in McDonald's on the way back to Georgia from South Carolina, and we're in a McDonald's, and some guy says, "Hey man, do you have a YouTube channel?" I was like, "I do." He's like, "Oh, I watch it all the time." I was like, "That's so cool." And then I'm watching the game on my phone. He joins in, and we're all rooting for Alabama as they give up a score and then get a score to take the lead, go for 2, get it, and then get a big interception to win it. So it was a little goofy thing with a couple Clemson guys all rooting for Alabama which is just weird. But anyway, that's outside the ACC. This is our SEC, this is our ACC power rankings. We got Miami, Clemson, Louisville. That's kind of a tier. SMU, Pittsburgh, and maybe you could even argue Boston College, Syracuse is another tier. And then you've just got this muddy middle, Georgia Tech, Duke, Stanford, Virginia Tech, Cal, maybe even Virginia in there. That's kind of just a muddled mess. And then I think the bottom, I think NC State's bad. Florida State just keeps losing. And I think NC State and Wake are bad. I don't know what's going to happen to them. We've got Wake in a couple weeks. I'll be doing a Q&A with an old friend who lives up in Winston-Salem, Wake Forest grad. Going to be interested to hear their thoughts on what the future is for them. So, hey, thanks everyone for joining. We're going to turn our attention to Clemson. And let's talk a bit about the Clemson-Stanford game. So let's dive into that. Hold on, let me get rid of this. Okay, let's dive into Clemson versus Stanford. So Clemson, I thought got off to a bit of a slow start. Let me pull this over here. It was a little bit of a struggle for a while. So obviously they immediately jumped out to a quick 10-0 lead because of a fumble. But I really thought that Stanford was the team just making dumb mistakes. They were, I don't want to say unforced because Wade Wood has had an excellent strip that caused the fumble. But the decision to start passing in the red zone 2 different times was really vexing to me. Didn't make any sense. They were running the ball with ease. I know that running outside gets harder in the red zone because the safeties are now closer. I get that. But to just start passing it with Ashton Daniels, who's not a great passer and he is a great runner, didn't make any sense to me. I was begging them to pass when they do it. I was just laughing. The picks were really egregious, bad picks. Like as soon as he threw it, I'm like, that's a pick. And their receivers almost didn't have a chance. They were gimme picks. I thought they threw away the game pretty early. And once they kind of stopped doing that, they played Clemson even for a while. It was 17-7 at halftime, despite two picks. It probably should have been 17-17 if they don't do that. But nonetheless, later in the game, Clemson really picked it up. So a couple things. I thought Klubnik didn't look that great. Hold on, let me find the specific play. So there was the long, it was a 70-yard completion to Wesco. Great play, but he left the throw like 5 yards short. If he leads them by another couple of yards, it's an easy touchdown. Instead, he's tackled on the 10-yard line. Clemson doesn't get the touchdown, and they end up settling for a field goal. Look, they won 40-14. It's fine, but he was completely open. That's the receiver doing all the work, and the quarterback didn't overthrow him. I guess that's worse, right? To overthrow a guy that you have a free 70-yard completion to, but not a great throw. It was a little late too, but also underthrown. Klubnik also had an interception, and it was kind of a bad one. Guy was running up the sideline. He had just started to beat the cornerback, but the safety was coming over, and he threw it, and the safety got I don't want to say an easy pick, but a pretty standard interception. But meanwhile, Olsen Pat Henry had cut across the middle of the field. I don't know if it was a slant as much as it was like sort of curling over the middle, but he had a pretty big open spot there, just kind of waiting for it, and Klubnik didn't see him, right? So that's a decision error there, more than an accuracy error. And then there's a couple other balls left short. Sometimes he would go long when there was a guy open short, or he would check it down and not see a guy open. I remember one time, I don't remember which player it was. I think it might have been Antonio Williams, but he was wide open for a touchdown. Instead, he checked it down, maybe got 5 yards, something like that. So I didn't think it was his best game, but again, when they really needed to pull away there at the end of the third quarter, I thought the most impressive moment of the game happened then. So the game's still in the balance. It's 20-7, and it's 20-7, and that's when there's the long pass to TJ Moore. He kind of bobbles it. I honestly didn't think it was a catch. I know a lot of you are going to disagree with that. I didn't think it was a catch. They take it off the board. And that's honestly when Clemson would just like run the ball a couple of times and end up, punting or something like that. Or maybe use little screens after kind of a disheartening play like that. That's what we've grown accustomed to. Instead, Garrett Riley dials up a long pass play. Cole Turner uses some great speed. He really is fast. And Klubnik puts it on the money for a touchdown. Excellent throw, excellent catch, amazing speed, touchdown, 43 yards, and that extends the lead to 27-7. Pretty much ends it. Stanford then gets the ball, good for them because they went for it on fourth down. That was kind of like, if we don't get this, the game's over. It's the fourth quarter now. They didn't get it, and then Clemson just dagger. Club Wesco, 34-yard touchdown, another great pass, elite receiver making great plays. And then they did it one more time, just to make it even better. A little, more of a plotting drive, and then it's to Olsen Pat Henry for a touchdown to make it 40-7, and then it would end up being 40-14 for a Clemson win. So not the prettiest all the way through, but in the end, Clemson pulled away. Not overly disappointed, but not blown away. The main thing that bothered me was the defensive ends. I thought AJ Hoffler struggled. I thought Cade Denhoff struggled. Whenever quarterback or even a running back went to the outside, they were pushing in and they ran right around the defensive end. And Kevin, I couldn't agree with you more here, especially early in the game. Running it, Clemson was not stopping it. I would have just ran it down Clemson's throat. Toss, triple option to the outside, speed option worked great. There was one play where Ashton Daniels faked a speed option, and I don't remember if it was a defensive end or a linebacker. It might have been both. I think it was one of them was RJ Mickens, all bit on the fake, and he ran upfield. So that outside run was great. I don't know why they, to your point, got cute. They could have made it close, but again, when Clemson needed to, they figured out the offense, smashed the gas, and blew them away. But the defensive end issue is real, right? That's not a fluky thing. Without Peter Woods, the defensive end group's really, honestly, not that great. TJ Parker's good. He's a great pass rusher, but he's more of your pass rusher than your edge setter. So then the other side, you'd really like to have, someone who's going to be great against the run. I didn't think Hoffler did that. Lawson, I thought, was decent, and maybe he's the next. Maybe he starts if Woods isn't back. But Clemson really needs Woods to be a starter. Dabo Swinney offered Coach Rumpf. He said, "Hey, do you want to go in the portal?" Because they lost Adam Kisai, who came in as a freshman, immediately transferred to Minnesota, and said, "Hey, we got that scholarship open. If you want, we can get a transfer." And Rumpf said, "No, thanks." And I think that was because he was just so confident in Woods, but. Now with Woods is out, you wish you had that transfer. So hopefully Woods is back and it's no harm, no foul, because when Woods is there, it's a great D line. The defensive tackles I thought were very good. I was totally wrong about them. I thought there would be struggles in defensive tackles since they lost everyone and then they moved Woods outside. But honestly, that hasn't been the case. All the defensive tackles have been excellent. Peyton Page has been good. Trey Williams has been good. Really, really impressed with them, and got to admit when I'm wrong. And I thought they were awesome. Who else deserves to be called out? Oh, of course, Devontae Capehart. He's been great all season. So love the defensive tackles and their play. Stephylon Green too. So that is something that I was a little worried about, and it has proved to not be a real reason to worry. Yes, Kevin, you're right here. Cade was short on throws all day. It's not going to work against Georgia, even though Georgia did lose. Can't say it enough. They did lose this weekend, but yeah, not going to work against Miami. How about that? But I think he'll get better, right? He'll get better. And he did, right? He did in the second half when he just blew him away in a couple plays. Let's see. Any other thoughts here? One or a couple final things. I thought Olsen Pat Henry looked really good. He's become the number 2 tight end. He's surpassed Josh Sapp. Didn't see that coming. I was wrong about that one too. But he looks great. Both I didn't know he could be so effective as a pass catcher, and he's good. So I think you feel good about Bringstool and Olsen Pat Henry now. That's a good duo. And Sapp's still perfectly good as a third string. So you got some depth at tight end now. You got to feel good about. And then I thought Woodaz and Carter were awesome. Carter had 3.5 tackles for loss. He was zipping all over the field. Woodaz had a pick and the forced fumble on a really, really good strip on the very first drive. Thought they were awesome. Avian Terrell had a pick. Jaden Lucas had a pick. They were awesome, and they made Ashton Daniels look really, really bad. 9 for 19 with 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions. The touchdown was on an incredible throw that you do not blame really anyone on the defense for. Just an elite NFL throw, which kind of came out of nowhere because he'd struggled so much. But yeah. Wade Woodaz was sensational. Absolutely. He was great. So kudos to that group. So I guess my final thoughts on this game are Clemson did not look sensational. Clemson did not look unbelievable. I don't think they're ready to go beat Alabama or Texas, or maybe not even go back and rematch and beat Georgia, right? But I think what we've seen this week is this could be the class of the ACC. Let's see one more week before we get a little aggressive and move Clemson above Miami. I'm not quite ready to pull the trigger on that, but I'm not scared of Miami anymore. I think Clemson, Miami are neck and neck right now. So I think that's a pretty good takeaway to have coming out of this week. Lastly, let's briefly talk about Florida State. Florida State got destroyed by SMU. Really, really ugly game for them. They're 1-4, 1-3 in the conference, and they just lost 42-16 in Dallas to the SMU Mustangs. They got outscored 28-7 in the second half. Did they quit? Did they quit in that game, or are they quit on the season? I really want to see DJ and Cade battle head-to-head. I'm hopeful that'll still happen. I don't think they have like a ton of confidence in Brock Glenn. Frankly, I think they should go to him because what do you have to lose? You might as well give him a chance to prove that he's, he can do something for you. And if he can't, you got to find someone to replace him, right? Because DJ is gone after this year anyway. Not sure there's any benefit of continuing to use DJ, but I sure hope they do because I want to see that battle. And it's, DJ's a good kid, nothing personally, but just the way Clemson took a downturn as soon as he became the starter, and then he transfers, which is fine, happy for him, but then he transfers back into the ACC to Clemson's arch rival. Just would feel like Clemson's really put that era behind them if they can go out and just absolutely torch Florida State the way they did NC State. Would be cathartic if it would be cathartic to do that to Florida State regardless, but to do it against DJ and put that era behind us completely would just feel really good. And DJ sort of passed the torch in the ACC championship game against UNC to Cade Klubnik. So now for them to battle, it'd be really cool. I think Florida State's defense, kind of like Stanford's, is going to be tougher than App State and going to be tougher than NC State unless they quit. And that's what we'll have to see. I don't know if they've just failed on the season. There's been a lot of talk about will transfer heavy teams when things don't go as planned kind of just fail because they don't have a connection to each other because they all just got there, or to the university because they all just got there. Maybe they're not even planning to graduate from there. This is going to be the case study, right? We haven't had the situation really like ever happen. So here it is. And Kevin tells us, thanks for this update. He hurt his hand, but he's expected to start. Great. That's exactly what I want to hear. I mean, I hope he's fine. Not happy to hear he hurt his hand, but want him to start. Like, let's see this. Let's see the showdown. I want the storylines. I want the fun. I want the catharsis. Obviously, if Clemson loses to DJ, that is ultimate disaster, season ruin kind of thing. But I think that is highly improbable. Maybe a few final thoughts. DJ Uyunglele has 1,065 passing yards. But he has 4 touchdowns to 6 picks. He's been sacked 12 times. He has a 53.8 completion percentage to only a 6.8 yards per attempt. Let me see if I can pull Clemson's real quick so we can get a comparison here. Give me just a moment. That's a really bad completion percentage to not have a high yardage, right? Because he's checking it down. He's the master of the check down. And yet, despite that, he's still not picking up a good completion percentage. If he was 70%, but they were all checkdowns, fine. All right, so here's the comparison. Klubnik, 66.4 completion percentage to Florida State, or DJ's 53.8. So nearly a 13-point difference. And DJ's completing them at 6.8 yards per attempt compared to 8.9 for Klubnik. And Klubnik has a 12-2 TD to interception ratio with only 3 sacks compared to a 4-6 with 12 sacks, which is insane. So huge quarterback advantage, you would think, for Clemson. Also with Florida State, Lawrence Tuafili, he's only averaging 4.8 yards per carry. The team as a whole is averaging 2.4. The offensive line is way worse than expected. Meanwhile, Clemson's is way better than expected. Moff is averaging 8 yards per carry, has 342 yards, and the team is averaging 6. And of course, the team includes sack yards lost, although there haven't been that many sacks. So Clemson is way better passing. They're way better running. And then you look at who's the best receivers on each team. Bryant Wesco has 238 yards and 7 catches for Clemson, leads the team in yardage. Antonio Williams has 16 receptions, 196 yards, leads the team in receptions. Big question is, Is Antonio Williams okay? As of this recording, we do not know. I think he's Clemson's best receiver. If he's out and Randall's out, luckily Tyler Brown is back, but if they're both out, that's a fairly big blow. And we know injuries to the wide receiver core has kind of sank the Clemson offense the past couple of years. Clemson did not have Antonio Williams last year against Florida State. I believe they win that game if they do have Antonio Williams. I'm not sure Florida State has a chance regardless, but I think if Antonio Williams does play, Florida State has almost no chance. So really, really want to see Antonio be healthy. Not really so much for this game, but I just really, really, really do not want to see him miss a huge chunk that hurt Clemson so bad last year. So let's just hope that's not the case. As for goals, I don't know if I have goals in terms of passing touchdowns or sacks or something like that. But I think, honestly, something better than we saw against Stanford. 40-14 final score at least, and I want it to look even prettier. I think Stanford's better. I think they're better than Florida State. And even though it's on the road, I think Clemson could beat them more soundly, or at least make it look more dominant. So pretty high expectations. I think Clemson will fulfill those. I'm going to have a pretty aggressive Clemson winning pick for this one. So looking forward to that. I hope you are too. As always, thanks for everyone who joined live. Thanks for everyone who will watch this replay. Thanks for the comments. Really appreciate it. If you're not already, don't forget to subscribe, and shout out to Ready Vets who have sponsored this show. So thank you so much for watching. As always, go Tigers. If you enjoyed this video, please help this channel by liking the video, subscribing, and leaving a comment. Also, if you're a pet owner and you live in the upstate, check out our sponsor, Ready Vets. They offer immediate walk-in care when your pet can't wait. They're open 7 days a week till 10 p.m. They're owned by 2 Clemson grads. They're located in Taylor's, just 10 miles from the Woodruff Road shopping district.